Hey, everybody, it's Gary Bernier, Whiskey Sommelier, and I have the extreme pleasure of being here with Stephen Semple and David Young from the Empire Builders podcast. And the reason you want to listen to the podcast is they did a great job of digging into the Uncle Nearest story. And we're not going to do that today, right, Dave? We're not going to talk about the story of Uncle Nearest. We're going to just talk about the tasting notes. And we also have Morning Maze with us. So we've got 4 whiskey somms, and we're going to drink some Uncle Nearest and give you the tasting notes, what we picked up as we enjoyed this great Tennessee bourbon. So listen to our notes, check it out, go buy one. But more importantly, listen to the Empire Builders podcast. Guys, anything else to say?
Cheers.
Enjoy the whiskey. Less talking, more drinking.
Exactly.
Perfect.
So you already have. Are you going to pass the bottle through or what?
Oh yeah. Okay. So here you go, Dave. Here you go, Dave. The magic of.
I thought you'd never ask.
So enough talking. Now let's get to drinking. Oh. There's definitely a sweetness on the nose.
Mm-hmm. And I'm not big into bourbon either, but I do like the sweetness of this. So can you smell the difference between yours and Morning's?
Oh, we haven't. No, we haven't. We haven't.
Both have been sitting out. Okay.
No, this is the one that's been sitting out.
Ah, okay.
So we have the fresh pour versus the one that's been sitting.
You have a better nose than I do.
Always.
I smell the fresh oak on this coming through.
It's very sweet. I like it. I like it a lot.
The one that's been sitting isn't as sweet on the nose.
So the one that's been sitting is not as sweet on the nose, is what you're feeling.
Yep.
Interesting.
Yep.
How's it sound?
The story comes through as well.
I listen really hard.
It's delightful. Yeah.
So what do you think?
Drink me.
What's interesting is because even though Tennessee whiskeys are still done in a charred or toasted barrel, I'm not really getting much smoke through this.
I'm not. No.
How about you, Gary?
Not smoke, but I do taste the char. Like I can taste the char. So the nose I was picking up, the oakiness, the tannins, but I can sort of taste that charcoaling filter, which for me is nice. I like it. And I'm with Dave. This is a sweet bourbon.
Right?
Yeah, and you get more of that char sort of, I think, on the finish. Yeah, like there's a finish that I get.
What was interesting for me was the first sip, was never our best sip. But this one, man, you got a lot of flavor out of that first sip when it was waking your mouth up. I was quite surprised by that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely a sweet whiskey. There's no question about that. What's your thoughts on it, Morning?
Reminds me of a sugar cookie.
So sweet.
Sweet.
So what I'm going to guess here is this is
the
far
sour
more up
kind
Dave's
of
lane than your lane.
This one's for you, Dave.
Hey, cheers.
What's interesting is they made this 50% alcohol by volume or just 100 proof right on the dot, which you don't see that often. Right.
No, you really don't. You either see it as being more or being less. Oh, that's interesting. There is a little bit different flavor profile.
Okay.
What is that? Well, I'm not gonna taint.
So Stephen, how quickly is this bourbon flying off the shelves in the US?
Oh, well, I know the growth rate that they had on it has been phenomenal, and they've built, like, they're building a new big fancy distillery, so it's doing incredibly well. And I think what's a real tribute to them is through the pandemic, while the pandemic was good for alcohol sales, the pandemic was not good for craft brewers or craft distillers. The craft industry really got hit, and they managed to to really maneuver their way through that, through some really innovative marketing ideas that they did. They really seized it as an opportunity and kept driving things forward. And now they're actually doing a fair bit of merchandising. They ended up, I forget the guy's name, they ended up hiring a person from Disney who basically ran merchandising at Disney, and is now doing merchandising at the distillery.
Cool. Yeah, I knew you said it was going quickly. Like, in other words, that it was growing quickly, and that it was becoming very popular.
They were having months of double and triple, or quarters of double and triple percent growth. They had a period where they ran out of product, and the cool thing is, when they ran out of product, they just kept advertising.
That's the way to do it.
Well, and it's not unusual for a relatively new distillery to run out of product, because the first couple of years you don't have the capability to distill as much as you do in the later years. So as you grow, you increase your distilling capabilities, which means then you have to increase your barreling capabilities, and just to meet the aging requirements. So yeah, I'm not surprised that they tripped over that little growth spurt problem.
Well, what everybody forgets about when you're doing whiskey, it's like you're having to figure out your demand 3, 4, 5 years out, right? Like today's distilling is not today's whiskey.
And you've got inventory that just has to wait.
Yeah. Well, and this is why we see a lot of distillers start off making moonshine and gins and vodkas. Mm-hmm. Because it's for a gin, it's a 6-month period from start to being able to have it on the shelf. So it's not unusual that distillers will make a moonshine or a gin, sell that while the other is aging in order to bring in sales and cash flow.
I think with vodka you can just sell it as it drips out of the still. So
pretty much. Yeah, gin, you still gotta do a little, put some other flavors and things like that into it. There's still the infusions, but it's still a much quicker product than a whiskey.
Yeah
and it's interesting. Morning and I, when last time we were in Kentucky and Tennessee, we went to a lot of the new distillers that have been popping up, because there's so many that have popped up along the whiskey trail, and some of them were at a stage where they weren't making whiskey yet, and they were selling their moonshine, and boy, some of them,
which was fabulous.
Oh, there's some that you went,
love the moonshine,
man, these are going to be awesome. Like when you're drinking a moonshine, you go, whew, this is going to be a great whiskey. It's like, yeah, we got to travel back there for when because they're going to be, there's some places that are going to be producing some unbelievable whiskeys, because their moonshines were really good.
Well, I'm glad we were able to do this.
So Gary, your final thoughts on it.
This is a great representation of a Tennessee whiskey, right? Little bit sweeter than I was expecting. Mostly the Kentuckys have that sort of sweet and a little bit more smoky. So this one's sweet, but without that deep smokiness. This is a very nice sipping bourbon, and I could see you using this for any mixed cocktail that calls for bourbon and being quite happy with it. So yeah, I think it's a great bourbon to have in your collection and to share with friends. I think it's a very nice. So,
can I add what I like about it now?
Sure.
Yeah.
And I have a different take on whiskeys that I like. Because I don't have the palate, I don't have the nose that so many of you have for, what do I like? What do I don't like? Am I getting periwinkle or sassafras or a little nut? I don't know. It's whiskey, right? But here's the thing.
I don't even know what sassafras is.
I thought he was saying kiss my ass.
But here's what I like about it. Now I have one more whiskey in my arsenal that I have a personal story to tell about. And to me, sharing a whiskey with someone is almost always about What's the story? What's the relationship that I have with the whiskey? Because I don't have the tools that a lot of whiskey somms have to pick out the different flavors and aromas in the bottle. And I know what I like, I know what I don't like, but I can tell a story about this whiskey now. We did a podcast about it. And so as my repertoire of whiskeys that I can tell personal stories about grows, I think that helps me be able to help people enjoy something about a whiskey that, especially if they're not that into whiskey, everybody loves storytelling. And so Uncle Nearest, man, it's a great whiskey. It's got a great story. And now I have a story to tell about it. So to me, that's what I get excited about.
That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
Good morning. What's your thoughts on it?
How am I going to top Dave? That's what
happens. You know, sometimes when you sit
never
back
want
and
to follow Dave.
well, that's what happens when you don't get in first. Sometimes you end up being last, and you know having to follow Dave.
I should have raised my hand a little bit sooner, I guess. So I will say I actually like it better when it sits, because for me, when it's so sweet on my nose, that's kind of it's a deal breaker. A little bit, I would say. So as it sat, what was really nice is that oaky flavor that Gary was talking about sort of blended a little bit better with that sweetness. And so it cut that for me. So it's actually quite drinkable at this point. Then it's not.
I get that. Yeah.
You know, it's really interesting, you know, and I think this is one of the things I always find fascinating about whiskeys is, and one of the things we haven't done is adding a little bit of water to it, but you add a little bit of water, or even just this whole idea. And I've learned this one from morning because I didn't used to notice it is, you know, we think about wines opening, right? Like we're very used to pour a red wine and let it open, and half hour later, a red wine can have a very, very different flavor profile as that wine opens. And it's really interesting that one of the things I've learned from morning is the same can happen with a whiskey, that you pour a whiskey and let it sit for a little bit, that its character can change a little bit as well. Now, it tends to happen faster than with a wine, but there's no question that there's those character changes that come from just pouring it and letting it sit for a little bit and get some of the alcohols released and a little bit of air into it. It's cool.
Mm-hmm.
It's cool. But Dave, I think one of the things I always love hearing from you is, what's the definition of the best whiskey?
Oh, our definition at Whiskey Marketing School is the best whiskey is the whiskey you like to drink, however the hell you like to drink it. Yeah. So we don't like, and then one of the things when we award one of these medallions to a new whiskey somm that's come through the Whiskey Marketing School, this thing weighs almost a pound, right? My neck is tired of having this. It's literally, it's like putting a pound, think of what a pound of frozen ground beef weighs, right? And hang that around your neck. And we tell people, look, if you can put this on and still be pretentious about whiskey, we're going to come kick your ass. Right? Because this is absurd. This is crazy, right? But it's cool too, and it gives you a story to tell when you put it on. And somehow a little pressure on the back of the neck from this thing, it does make me smell things that I wouldn't maybe catch.
So the only extra that I like to add to Dave's definition is, my favorite whiskey is the whiskey that I like the most at the cheapest price.
There you go.
Right? Like I love it when I find that one where you go, wow, I like this, and the price, that's it? This is great.
Dude, I love whiskey that somebody else bought.
Yeah, well, you see, you have that in your background there.
Somebody else bought all of this.
Anyway, this was fun, and for people, if you, I hope, to Dave's point, it's a great story. Go check out the Uncle Nearest podcast. It is such a fascinating story about Jack Daniels and Nearest Green.
Yeah,
but don't skip the whiskey.
Don't skip
Don't
the whiskey. Go get a bottle. Go.
Yeah. That's a great finish right there.